And let's look at this. Because now what it's saying is that suddenly 5 million and slightly further back, there's large punctuation in the novelty on the planet. And we know a lot about this period. And strangely enough, what we know about this period confirms this model very closely, because what these things are known to be are glaciations, which begin on this time scale, and these low points here correspond very closely with the interglacial periods. You see, what's happening is populations of human beings and animals are being locked up when the ice moves south. Then during the interglacials, these islanded populations are mixing, and you're getting movement, progressive speciation in the fossil record along at the bottom of these gradients. And you know, it's a technical matter to match the glaciations in different parts of the world with this, but the agreement is pretty close. Or, you know, a case can be made. 45,000 years. And let's look at this. Okay, this is a period of time where we actually begin to get artifacts, human artifacts of an interesting sort. And it's very hard to date the emergence of language, but it's interesting that one school holds that it occurred about 33,000 years ago, and that we get this very steep movement into novelty here, right there. This is probably the heyday of the Neanderthals, because this is where the population of the Neanderthals seem to be the highest and found in the largest areas. But this is a glacial period, the last glacial period. And when the interglacial arrived about 19,000 years ago, you get what's called the beginning of the Magdalenian era. And this is a tremendous explosion of creativity, painting, ochre burials, ritual, movements. All of these things that appear on this, and this is, I maintain, where this partnership paradise, this mushroom, pastoral, feminized, ecologically dynamic and balanced society existed along this gradient here. Then it broke up around 10,000 years ago. Drying and the factors that we discussed shattered it, and there was a carrying capacity problem or something like that. Here, let's see this in a little more detail. But we're now closing distance with the cognizable domains of known history. So if the theory is going to fail, it should fail as the data accumulates and the dates become more precise. We're looking at 45,000 years, 22,000 years, 11,000 years. Let's look at this. Okay. Now, what it's saying is that after this carrying capacity problem around 10,000 BC was somehow overcome, and there was a very, very steep descent into novelty, which reached its culmination around 6300 BC. Well, this corresponds very well with the dates for Çatalhöyük in Turkey, which is this Anatolian town, 9,000 years old, that achieved a level of civilization that was not seen at any other site until 1,000 or more years later. In other words, until there were civilizations establishing themselves along this gradient. This was the last bastion of the goddess partnership mushroom symbiosis. And what destroyed these people, we know Çatalhöyük level 5 was destroyed in 6500 BC by wheeled chariot people from the north. In other words, this spells the Indo-European bad guys who who came from north of the Caspian Sea. And then you see this tremendous reestablishment of traditional pattern. Well, then along this gradient here, you know, when I went to school, what we were taught was history begins at Sumer. This was what we were always told, that it went Sumer, Chaldea, Babylon, Egypt. And in fact, those great patriarchal river-based civilizations established themselves on a gradient down here with Egypt right here at the bottom, establishing a new high water mark for novelty, a high water mark that would not be surpassed until the establishment of the Greco-Roman civilization over here. Along this upswing, what you get are a series of meathead civilizations, the Hittites, the Mitanni, the Assyrians. These are all kick-ass chariot warfare, warrior caste, you know, that rigmarole. All that's going along here. Then there's the great turning point. I mean, here again, you're seeing the signature of the algorithm, and I call it history's fractal mountain. Notice that what I'm saying is that all of history, from the building of the Great Pyramids to the present moment, is portrayed by that much of the screen. And now we can go into this and explore parts of it. Let's look at it a little closer. 11,000 years on the screen. There's history's fractal mountain, 5,000 years. Let's look at this for a minute. Okay, this is 5,000 years. We're still targeted on today. And what it's saying is that there was clearly a great moment, a single great moment of shift at some point in the past when a series of conservative tendencies, habitual patterns of activity were, in a sense, overthrown once and for all. And even though there was plenty of shit to be slogged through from here to here, the plot was inevitable. Okay, well, so what is that point? Well, it's about 980 BC. So what was going on then? This is the shift to... It's essentially that moment when Mycenaean piracy overwhelmed the goddess religion, and the Greeks stopped being fishermen and pulled their boats up on the shore and started to talk philosophy. And that set off a cascade of cultural effects that then reverberate to this day. It comes down along this gradient. Then down here you get the fall of Rome. Then since the fall of Rome, you get this series of wildly oscillating cultural effects until as recently as the European Enlightenment in 1740, when the wave then drops to yet lower levels and begins to explore forms of novelty related to the human-machine integration and electromagnetic technology and so forth and so on. We'll look at this, but I just wanted to call your attention to this. And for another reason, there's a concept here which I haven't talked about yet, but which is good to introduce now, and that is the concept of resonance. Because this algorithm is fractal, because it is self-nested on many levels, you encounter the same topological manifold over and over again. Well, since we're looking at history, it's natural to make the analogical assumption that these repetitious topologies are somehow related to each other, so that there's suggested in this theory a series of natural nested cycles where, for instance, every 67 years, all the themes of the previous 4,306 years are somehow condensed and acted out. And it's the interface and interference patterns set up by these times in the past and in the future, sliding against each other, that create phenomena like fads and fashions and outbreaks of hysteria and weird taste things and ripples in the collective mind. Okay, so this is the signature of history's fractal mountain. Greco-Roman civilization and its spectrum of effects are this long cascade down here. Now let's look